Good morning, BookTube, YouTube. This is Johnny. Once again, I'm looking into this viewer of this camera and everything is blurry. But I maybe should go get my eyes checked again. I just had my eyes checked and they said they're fine, but lately I think I'm losing my sight. You get my age, everything starts deteriorating. Anyway, I thought I'd make a video. It is a new month. It's November the 2nd, 2024. It is 8:26 in the morning here in Southwest Michigan. Yeah, I live in Holland, Michigan. It's just not that far from Lake Michigan. And it is going to be a cold, clear day. And here in West Michigan, and yeah, this morning my wife left early to go to a biblical theology workshop, studying biblical theology with Nancy Guntry and Benjamin Glad. Benjamin Glad is a New Testament scholar. I have books by him, but I didn't bring them up. I forgot to bring them up, but so she left this morning early so she could get a seat. So I am sitting here, which is my mantra, writing in my diary. I'm on page 910 for the year 2024. Drinking coffee. Reading for morning devotions. Now my wife and I, as I mentioned, we've been reading through the New Testament in our morning devotions together, and we're going through the revelation of Jesus Christ, which is the last book of the New Testament. And we were on chapter 17 this morning in Revelations. The Scarlet Woman and the Scarlet Beast. So then we're in chapter 18, then there's chapter 19, chapter 20, 21, and then we're done. And then I think we're going to read through the New Testament again, read through the Gospels, start with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I have been reading through the Psalms for a long time. And this morning I've been reading volume 2 on this is I think 4-volume series on, well, it's a commentary. The Psalms, a Christ-centered commentary. This is volume 2, Psalms 1 through 50. This is by Christopher Ash. And I'm on Psalm 10, which reads, "Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thou thyself in times of trouble? The wicked in his pride does persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. For the wicked boasteth of his heart's desire, and blesseth the covetous, whom the Lord abhorreth. The wicked, through pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. His ways are always grievous. Thy judgments are far above out of his sight. As for all his enemies, he puffeth at them. He has said in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be an adversary. His mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity. He sitteth in the lurking places of the villages. In the secret places does he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily set against the poor. He lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den. He lieth in wait and catcheth the poor. He does catch the poor when he draweth him into his net. He croucheth and humbleth himself, that the poor may fall by his strong ones. He has said in his heart, God has forgotten. He hideth his face. He will never see it. Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up thy hand. Forget not the humble. Wherefore does the wicked condemn God? He has said in his heart, thou wilt not require it. Thou hast seen it, for thou beholdest mischief and spite, to requite it with thy hand. The poor committeth himself unto thee. Thou art the helper of the fatherless. Break thou the arm of the wicked and the evil man. Seek out his wickedness until thou find him. The Lord is king forever and ever. The heathen are perished out of his land. Lord, thou hast heard the desire of the humble. Thou prepare their heart. Thou wilt cause thy ear to hear, to judge the fatherless and the oppressed, that the man of the earth may no more oppress. Psalm 10. So I was reading Psalm 10, reading in the commentary, and one thing I haven't mentioned, I showed you some commentaries on the Psalms a couple of videos back, but one set I did not show you. And this set of this is a 3-volume commentary on the Psalms that I saw many years ago when I was living on a Christian commune in Northern California. And I got out, I'm going to show you something that it's a pamphlet of that commune. And this folder contains something I wrote many years ago. It's called The Memoirs of a Puritan Bum. And I wrote this many years ago. I think we were living still in Michigan. I was going to Bible college, and I've mentioned over the years that I destroyed my diaries when I left California from 1968 to 1977. But what I did, I decided one day out back in, I don't know what day it was. I don't think I put a date on these. Let's see if I have a date. Yeah, it was in January of 1984. I decided I would write down everything I could remember. Now, your memory is always fallible. It's imperfect. It's selective what you remember from the time you were young, maybe a child, up until how old you are. Now, I'm 72. But when I wrote these, so what I did, I went, we had our first child, Caleb John was born, and I wrote my memories up until his birth. And I wrote down everything I could remember up until the birth of our first son. Carol and I were married in 78, and I think Caleb was born in 1981. I'm kind of, my memories. Caleb is 42, 43 years old, so I don't know. I can't calculate time. I don't have my timeline here where I have this timeline where I mentioned major events in my sojourn on this earth. But the point is, I wrote down everything I could remember from the time I was a child up until the birth of our son. And I started, what it says here, back in August 1983, on the 4th, I wrote about my life up until I was 8 years old. So I started this in 83. And like I said, we were at Reformed Bible College, Grand Rapids, Michigan. The point of this whole thing is that's when I start writing this. So when writing down my memories up into the birth of our first son, I wrote about when I was on that commune up in Northern California. And that's why I got it out, because when I was at that commune, and here's the little booklet here, we ministered to Samaritans in the USA, and it was called Let me see here. The Rising. Let me see here. It's called the Rising Sun Ranch, and that's where. And I can't remember. It must have been when like I said, I don't have my timeline here, but I think I was at that ranch probably 73 or 74, around 1973, 74. I can't remember exactly, but what it was a ministry of Richmond House. And I've mentioned to you, Richmond House was a Christian commune that I was a part of when I first became a Christian in 1970. See, it says here, the Richmond House was founded in the summer of 1970 to provide, in a low-key manner, training and counseling for many of the kids who were coming to Jesus during the last several years. The idea was to provide teaching in the basics of the faith as opposed to doing your own thing, with an opportunity to share the good news through the campus outreach of UC Berkeley along Telegraph Avenue, with house being only 15 minutes away from Berkeley. It provides a secluded atmosphere out of the intense Berkeley scene, yet close enough for those who are ready to begin to learn how to minister in the very scene of which they had come. The house can accommodate 10 guys in the main house, 3 girls in the rear apartment. There are many who live in the local area who have become involved in the ministry, who participate in weekly meetings. So I went to Richmond House when I first became a Christian there in Richmond, California. But I also was a member of the First Baptist Church. But they also had the Rising Sun Ranch. And there was a time when the Rising Sun Ranch, the people who were running it from Berkeley, were leaving and going back to the Bay Area. They were older fellows in their 30s. And they wanted, and we were, the Richmond House, the ministry of Richmond House, I can't remember the guy, his name was Bob Gio. He wanted someone to go up there and run the ranch until, like, in a transition period. So I don't know how it came about, but I said I would go up there and I would feed the chickens and milk the goat and milk the cows and do all that until they could get somebody up there full time to live there. And that was the Rising Sun Ranch, which says, the Rising Sun Ranch ministry began in October 1970 to help fill a vacuum and provide a landing place for the thousands of kids in our society that had just found Jesus as their Savior and had no place to go. The ranch is located 20 miles east of Garbesville in Humboldt County. It was purposely chosen to maintain a low financial overhead and take the youth out of the trappings of dangerous environmental pressures for a short time. Past experience had provided this time on the ranch is invaluable to each person's future as they begin their new walk in the Lord. So what they would do on weekends, people would come up to the ranch, new converts to Christianity, new Christians, and they'd have Bible studies and sing songs and worship services. And there was a church. I don't know if there was a church up there we went to. It says the ranch can house 20 guys in the bunkhouse, 4 girls in the lower house. The ranch is dedicated to evangelize the communal hill people. There are constantly new ones moving into the area. The hitchhikers and Highway 101 to providing a place to disciple those sent to the ranch from the cities. The ranch is presently teaching a Bible study in the prison camp and is the only Christian meeting place in a 20-mile radius. So I went up to the Rising Sun Ranch, and in the main house was a library. I'm getting long-winded here. We're already going on 15 minutes. So in that bunkhouse, well, it wasn't a bunkhouse. It was a major house. It had a kitchen. It had a big, huge, like, area that you had Bible studies, and it had couches, and it was like a big, huge house. And they had a library there, some books that these people who had lived there had left. And I would look at these books, and in that was this a set of this, The Treasury of David by C.H. Spurgeon. And I never, back then in 1974, 73, I never heard of Spurgeon. And I looked, now this is not the set that was there. Later on, when I came back to the Bay Area, I don't know, my set was published in 1974. I bought these in 74 there in, I think, some bookstore in probably it was in Berkeley or Oakland. I bought them somewhere. So that's the point of this whole ramble here, is that if you want a good commentary on the Psalms and C.H. Spurgeon was a 19th century British Calvinistic evangelical preacher. He's very famous Baptist. And I mentioned Reformation Heritage Books. They're reprinting his sermons, which go like 60 volumes. They're publishing. But he wrote a commentary called The Treasury of David. And Psalms, volume 1, you have Psalms 1 through 26, and 27 to 57. Volume 2, Psalms 58 and 87, and 88 to 110. And volume 3, Psalms 111 to 119, and 120 to 150. So, but what is interesting about Spurgeon is that he gives his own exposition of the psalm, and then he has all these notes on verses, and he quotes all these commentaries and Puritan works on, like he'll go through Psalm 110, and then he'll quote all from these other commentaries or sermons on these verses in the Psalms. So I just thought I'd mention, if you check out The Treasure of David, 3 volumes by C.H. Spurgeon. It's considered a classic commentary on the Psalms, and I highly recommend it. So here's my California driver's license. That's what I look like when I was... Yeah, I used to shave my beard. This is 1981 identification card. So yeah, I wrote down all my memories up until the birth of our first son, and I called it Memoirs of a Puritan Bum. Also, this is a good book on the Psalms. I mentioned Psalms, Old and New, Exegesis, Intertextuality, and Hermeneutics by Ben Witherington. The third. It's Ben Witherington, the third, not the second. Yeah, I bought this book and I forgot all about it until about a month ago. I was going through my books and I saw this, and so it's a good book on the Psalms. So yeah, Spurgeon. When I first became a Calvinist about 1975, Baker Bookhouse publisher, they used to print in paperback the sermons of Spurgeon, like on certain topics, like the Spurgeon on the sovereignty of God, Spurgeon on different spiritual topics. And I used to read a lot of Spurgeon, but I don't have his sermons. I have a big CD-ROM that contains all the sermons of C.H. Spurgeon, and he wrote a lot of devotional books. And some I have downstairs. And Calvinistic Baptists, Reformed Baptists are really into Spurgeon. Not only that, but people who love. One thing about Spurgeon, he really loved the Old English Puritans, and he often refers to the Puritans in his writings. And so yeah, I found this at that it's not a bunkhouse. It was just a major big house on Rising Sun Ranch that people would all gather, and there'd be Bible studies and sing songs, spiritual songs. And I would take these, but way back then I would take a volume up to the bunkhouse where I slept it, and I would look through them. But of course, back then I didn't know anything about Reformed theology, or I was an Armenian dispensationalist. I didn't know anything about Reformed theology or the Puritans or anything. But many years later, I don't know when I must have bought this in 74 or 70, around that time when I came into the Reformed faith. So yeah, C.H. Spurgeon, the Treasury of David, very famous classic commentary on the Old Testament Psalms. So yeah, I'm reading on Psalm 10 this morning here. Yeah. So yeah, I finished writing in this thing in 1987. The last sentences here are, the days were dark back then, and I hated my existence. I still had not accepted myself. And that's one thing I still struggle with. Back then I was struggling to accept myself. I'm very insecure. And I'm not about very, I suffer from insecurity. How bad that is, I don't know, since I don't socialize. I talk to my wife, I talk to my kids, my grandkids. I left the visible church almost 24 years ago. Yeah, I was at Rising Sun Ranch there in Northern California. I was there for about 3 months, and I left because Richmond House brought up a family to take over the ranch. It was a guy who was married to a woman who had been divorced, and she had a couple of kids. And when they took over, I just left because I didn't like the family. I didn't like the vibes of this family. That's a whole nother story I can tell you about this family. This guy, I knew him from Richmond House. He married this divorced woman with a couple of kids, and they came up to Rising Sun Ranch, and I didn't really like him. I didn't like his wife and the kids. So I went back down into the Bay Area, and I don't know, eventually I wound up at the Richmond Rescue Mission there in Richmond, California. I think around that time. Because, yeah. So I wasn't at the ranch that long, maybe 3-4 months. And then I went back to the Bay Area, Richmond, California, and then I got on staff at the Richmond Rescue Mission. And I can't remember how long I was there, maybe 2 years. And then I left the rescue mission in 77, 76. And a year later, I left California and went to Reformed Bible College. It's all kind of fuzzy in my mind. But yeah, so yeah, check out The Treasury of David. It's 3 volumes by C.H. Spurgeon. They're always available. It's a classic commentary on the Psalms. Some people who have commented don't know how to write a diary or get into writing your diary or keeping a journal. Just start with the time. Remember when you were born. Write down the memories up until you were born, or whatever your earlier memories are up until the present time. Just write down. Maybe write down about your ancestors, or write down about your mom and dad, or if maybe you were an orphan and you were adopted, and or whatever. I mean, you all know my story. I'm not going to go repeat it. So yeah, I'm reading this on Psalm 10 this morning. My wife is gone until 4 o'clock this afternoon at a biblical theology workshop. Drinking coffee, writing in my diary. Today's Saturday, which is college football, which starts at noon. I usually watch it on mute, and then I read. And yeah, I just go through the day. So I know this is kind of a ramble, but it's been 4 days since I made a video. And I like to be spontaneous. I like to be real. Yeah, I still suffer about accepting myself. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe childhood trauma. Always feeling rejected. Feeling like an outcast. Feeling like an alien. Living in the wasteland. And dreading next week when we have our presidential elections. But I look to God to give me grace, give us grace to just to keep going, seeking the Lord. So I hope you're having a good weekend, a good new month of November of reading, and yeah, so I'll sign off. Once again, thank you for your comments. I do pray you're all doing well. Have a good reading weekend. Have a good new reading month. Thank you for the comments. And until next time, bye.